matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter how you came here, if you came alone or with others, you're welcome here. No matter whom you love or how you speak or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. Whether you came with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes, you're welcome here. If you came with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands, then indeed, you are welcome here. Please rise as we do our opening hymn for the morning. Soon the day will arrive.
Soon the day will arrive when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without weather. On that day, thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Some have dreamed, some have died to make a bright tomorrow, and a vision remains in our hearts. Now the torch must be passed with new hope, not in sorrow, and a promise to make a new start. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me.
Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. I'm pleased to welcome you today. Reverend Chris is away. He has been asked to speak at 2 different installations for ministers who are starting in new churches. So he'll be in Arizona this week and Cedar Rapids, Iowa next week. So online people, we are glad you are with us. After this service, we have a congregational meeting, but I'm intrigued by who shows up to be early for the congregational meeting and who shows up for the congregational meeting so then they can do the service. So I like that y'all are mixing the 9 o'clock and 11:30 crowds. 11:30 people, tell the 9 o'clock people how hard it is on days like Easter to find parking when there may be other places to park, since we're growing. All right, okay. The other things for you to know really quickly. We are going to have the congregational meeting roughly at 10:15. We need you to clear, you can hang out and talk, but we need to reset the sanctuary for the congregational meeting and then have you sign in so we can have quorum. So go out, talk to people, enjoy, and then come right back. And we are going to try and stream the meeting, online people. But I don't know that we're going to have a mechanism for you to voice in unless you call or text one of us. All right, here are the things you need to know. Congregational meeting is going on. Birdhouses are due on, we have a whole variety. Oh, you can see most of them online. We have a whole variety of them. They're due next week, painted, and then we're going to auction or sell them off on the 5th, along with a big old plant sale that we're doing. And then after the 5th, there's another thing that's happening. Yeah.
Okay, you might have heard about this last Sunday, but the Unitarian Impromptu UU auction is back, and so are we. Save the date. Remember the date? Saturday, May 11th. Let's say that one. Say it once more. Saturday, May 11th. Because the most important thing is that you are there, and the next part and most important thing is that you go to something that is new. The theme of the auction is Unitarians gone green again. How about that for recycling? But what's new this year is we have an app. And on that app, you can find out everything about the auction. You can also make a donation, see what kind of things we're looking for. And most importantly, you can sign up to attend. And you can also get your paddle number and be ready to bid when you show up that night. Not only will it make sign-ups easy, it's going to make checkout a breeze. And remember, last year was better than ever. Well, it's going to be even better this year. So see you on May 11th.
I have a question, Suzanne.
Yes. Oh, I do have an answer, too.
Oh, good. And she doesn't know I was going to do this part. Is the auction only for people who are super rich?
Absolutely not.
So I could come and have a way to engage and enjoy it even if I don't have ample income?
Yeah, absolutely. That happened last year, and we're doing even more of it this year because it's important that everybody's here and everybody participate in the way that they can.
I'm really good at hosting dinner parties. Can I donate that?
Oh, yes. In fact, that's one of our hot ticket items. I don't know if Jerry's in here this morning, but Jerry and David, yeah. And also Joanne Looney, too.
So
is a big donor of meals.
I have an old printer that doesn't work anymore.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't connect to any computers now.
That's too bad.
Can I donate that?
No.
Okay. Don't donate old things.
No.
But if I have like an experience or something that I'm really skilled at, I should donate that.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, do I pay to come to this?
We're working it out so that it will be accessible to everyone, and what you pay will be up to you. And we're making it very accessible because you can invite your friends, and you'll be able to pay for them as well, because we're going to make it not a sliding scale, but
pay what you're able to.
What you're yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Should I eat before I come?
We'll have food.
Okay.
We always have food. Not that that's the reason you come, right?
All right. Thank you.
One more thing. I have these handouts at the table, and it has, if you don't want to use the QR code, we've got the website address. Please pick one up, and thanks.
Yeah, what time does it start, Suzanne?
The doors open at 6 p.m., and I'm not sure what time the auction starts, but check the website, and we'll put it on there as soon as we know.
There's a large team of people working on the auction, and actually the day after the auction, one of the things we auction off is anthems, which you've already done, I believe, choral anthems, and both ministers will auction off a sermon. The one that won last year, I am doing the day after the auction. So it's called the Louisiana's One-Star Review. Louisiana's One-Star Review. Oh, and the choir anthem is when? This Sunday, not today. Next Sunday. What's the choir anthem? Or is it a secret? Oh, it's Bridge Over Troubled Water. But you all know that, no one else knows that, so let it be a surprise. The other things for you to know on, we have every month an LGBT plus youth circle. So if you have a family member or a friend of a family member who identifies somewhere on that spectrum and they are in high school, we have a youth group specifically designed for support for them. And on the 5th, we're doing our flower ceremony and we're having a child dedication. So if you would like to have your child dedicated, whether they are a baby or older, that is our time to do it. I think we already dedicated yours. No? Nope? Okay. That was not interesting for all of you. It was me processing in real time. Anyway, so we'll have a child dedication. If you would like to, please reach out to me or Reverend Chris, and we will see about making that happen. Oh, glad you're with us. Would you join me in this morning's prayer and reflection? The God that we know when we see love and hope and kindness. That mystery that holds us together that has gone named and unnamed for generations. Help us to be grateful for this land we are on, for all people who have tended this land, for people for whom this land was and we took it away. Help us to acknowledge all of the magic and mystery that comes in this soil. Help us to connect to the past, and help us to build for the future. Help us to know that there is too much violence in this world, too much division, too many closed-off hearts and conflicted desires. Help us to build a world as it should have been generations ago. Help us to build a world where love can roll down like waters. May this world be more just. May hearts be opened. Amen.
This upcoming Friday will be a memorial service for Kurt Brown. He was a friend of the church. It will be at the Garden Center at 10 a.m. on the 26th. All are welcome to that. Also, a longtime member of this church and actually chair of my search committee that brought me here, Christy Howard, is right now struggling with a pretty significant hospitalization. She has been in ICU for a week but is making progress. If you would like to reach out, former member of this church, Christine Asaf, has agreed to be the point of contact so that they don't have to sort of answer every person's question about everything. And Vicki Berry, member of this church and congregational care team, is this congregation's point of contact for supporting Christy. And also, if we could place a stone, we have the birth of a great-grandson. This is for Joyce Young's great-grandson, Charlie Cruz Spinoza, who was born very recently. This ritual we have is open to everybody, visitor and member alike. Online people, please type your stone into the chat. We invite you to come forward either along the west or the east wall. Take a stone, let it represent whatever's on your heart, whatever you're struggling with or working through. Place it in the chalice bowl. We now invite those who wish to come forward as we place stones. And we say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is the symbol of the power of love.
From the all that dwell below the skies. Let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung, through every land, by every tongue.
One day, I was invited to take tea in a family of our congregation and pass the evening with a small number of friends. Being called to attend a wedding, I did not reach the house till near 10 o'clock. Instead of a few persons convened simply for an hour's conversation, there was a large company who danced. Now, if I had followed the advice of one of my instructors at Andover, I should have instantly retired rather than experience something so inconsistent with the dignity and seriousness of a Christian life. But this cheerful company was visible only to the omniscient one. Before me stood the young and happy, upon whose fates and fortunes the somber shadows of adversity had not yet gathered. Their minds were bright and buoyant, their steps elastic, their ears open to the melodies of sound, their eyes radiant with pleasure. And I was meditating upon the music, and the sprightly conversation characterized the whole scene, a sweet, profound, unwanted perception of God's goodness, and that captivated my soul. God is too good to not provide for us something nobler, better, greater, more permanent, and more satisfying than the transitory possessions and pleasures of time. Can God present to us the chalice of existence and then dash it from our lips just as we begin to taste its joys? Is not God's infinite love a pledge that God will never treat us so cruelly? Can God awaken irrepressible desires of continued, unending happiness only to be crushed out and disappointed forever? If the Holy Spirit ever breathed on my heart, it was on that occasion, amid the music, thoughtlessness, levity, ceremonials, and sensuous attractions of an evening party. There, if ever, the inspirations of God touched and ennobled my soul.
Robin, put the image back up for a second. So one of the things you should know about the process for making this service is the minister puts together the order of service. We hand it over to a member of the staff, and we say to them, go find all of the images from Google and do your best to figure out who they are. That's not Parson Theodore Clapp. I don't know who it is. You can take it down. Theodore Clapp was the minister at the First Unitarian Church of New Orleans in the 1830s, and he was a much more Gothic-looking gentleman than that guy ever could have been. Allison, if you're watching, I'm sorry, I should have looked at it. He's almost like cartoonishly Gothic. He looks like Edgar Allan Poe had a dream of. Poetry is to Edgar Allan Poe as Edgar Allan Poe would be to this man in his look. All right, that's not on script. Okay. So I was raised Unitarian Universalist in Slidell, Louisiana. For those of you who do not know, Slidell is the Denham Springs of New Orleans. I don't mean... It's like a small town that's right outside of a bigger city. Anyway. I loved my church growing up, which was in Lacombe, but when I was in high school, it was mostly little kids and older people. I grew up at a time, it was like the last generation before the internet really came about, where everyone still needed to kind of claim themselves by what they wore. So I grew up in the time of cross necklaces and what would Jesus do, armbands and all of this. And I knew that I wasn't welcomed in those circles, both because it wasn't my religion, but also because I just didn't understand it entirely. And I was desperate in high school, junior high and high school, to prove that the church I was a part of was real in some way and to have my own symbol. And so I would constantly look for chalice necklaces to wear when I was like 12, 13, 14. And I would the UU World used to come like every month. That's a publication of our association. And I would look through every ad to look to see if I could afford one of the chalices in there. But those were not teenager-friendly junk jewelry that they were selling. Those were like $50, $60, like, I don't know, gold or silver with gems and stuff. So I always left that magazine thinking that I just wasn't able to afford one of these necklaces. One day at church, posted on the bulletin board was an advertisement for a chalice necklace that was only $10. My mom pulled it down and brought it to me. I told her I was interested. She called the phone number on the flyer, because this is pre-email days. And it was a 504 area code, which meant that there was someone in New Orleans. And when she called the woman to order one, she started talking to her. And it turns out that this woman had a daughter who was my age, who was in the youth group at the First Unitarian Universalist Church in New Orleans. It was February, somewhere between when I was 14 and 15. And we took a 45-minute drive, and to that church, and I still remember the amazement that I felt when I walked into the room and I saw like 10 or 15 other Unitarian Universalist youth who looked as bedraggled as I was. I want to mark the church that I grew up in. For those who don't know, our whole lives, OWL is a comprehensive sexuality education program. The precursor to that is called AYS, which is the one that I should have taken. But I was the only one my age who could have taken it. So it would have been me alone taking sex ed with 4 teachers, which was not going to happen. I mean, it's not allowed, but like that was the experience I had. So to walk into a room with 10 or 15 people my own age was pretty amazing. That one necklace, that one chance encounter helped me find a more comprehensive understanding of my faith. It helped me to connect with a congregation and with Unitarian Universalism as a larger faith movement. Because every few months, we would load up 10 to 15 youth in a van and drive them. We would call them rallies in this area. Other places, they called them cons. But these large youth gatherings of like 100 to 200 other Unitarian Universalist youth in cities like Oklahoma City and Dallas and San Antonio and Austin. I shy away from discussing my ministerial origins through the youth programming of our association, mostly because of my age. When I started, so ministry is kind of an illusion. Like you only think I'm a good minister. I'm only a good minister because you think I'm a good minister. And the minute you realize that I'm just a human being doing ministry, it can start to kind of crumble. So when I was in my 30s, I was very, very hesitant to remind you how young I was. Now that I'm in my 40s, I can start getting access to some of those stories. No, I mean like, I wasn't going to come up here when I was 32 and say, do you remember 10 years ago? Well, anyway. What I experienced growing up as a Unitarian Universalist, and specifically in how we did youth ministry at the time, and specifically at that congregation, it was a manifestation of universalism more profound than anything I could have described. As frustrated as I get with this faith, as difficult as it can be to live in this world and to be a Unitarian Universalist, and also to deal with the very humanness of colleagues and practitioners of this faith, that experience as a high schooler has continued to be a source of hope and trust for this religion. Today, this whole service is really about home. Specifically, I took the hymn of the month, which is called Love Calls Me Home, and I thought today would be a time to explore it. It was written by Peggy Seeger. She is the half-sister of Pete Seeger, who was, by the way, a Unitarian Universalist. I saw him perform at General Assembly one year. When someone interviewed her about this hymn, she said it was written about a woman named Christine Lassiter, who was one of the cultural catalysts in Asheville. These are Peggy Seeger's words. For over a decade, she wrote documentary scripts, plays, poems, and performed in innovative playback theater. In early 2000, she was diagnosed at the age of 49 with a brain tumor and given 4 months to live. Her friends rallied around her as she made the decision to reject extra chemotherapy, radiation, and invasive medical techniques. The song was first sung in May of 2000, when a benefit was raised to help her with her medical costs. Christine was there with 150, glowing in her red velvet dress. She said she'd extended her time because of her friends, who had surrounded her with love and support during her final year. Many times she said, "I don't want you to forget me." She died peacefully, with dignity, on February 13th, 2001. Christine, your friends will always remember you. I thought a lot about what home means to me. I know the Carry Me Home from the hymn we're going to sing at the end is really about returning us to the mystery we came from. But today, that's not where I'm led when thinking about home. And because of some things that are happening at that church in New Orleans, I thought today I would like to talk a little about Unitarian Universalism and the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans. More specifically, I wanted to talk about how I found a home in that building. When I first attended that youth group, we used to meet in the multi-purpose room, which was just off of the kitchen. Then for a little while, we met in the bell tower, which was like up a spiral staircase that they somehow got a piano up there. And the youth got to take parts of the piano home. I still have a little piece of that piano. They stopped letting us meet up in the bell tower, which I think was probably a wise idea. I don't know whose idea it was to put the youth way up there. For a while, we met in one of the dressing rooms off of the gymnasium. For a little while, we met in the chapel. The church was in the building so the church has existed since the 1830s, but where I showed up, it was in a building that had existed, they moved in the early 90s. It was a very Gothic-looking building. I was convinced that it was, not just me, a lot of us were convinced that it was haunted by its original minister, Parson Clapp, which is why I was hoping you got the not grinning baseball cap guy. Parson Clapp was a Presbyterian minister who, after he experienced the joy of living in Louisiana, decided there could not be anything as a punishing angry God. In other words, a strict New England white Calvinist came to Louisiana and said, God cannot be angry and punishing because look at how much these people love living. He converted to Universalism in the 1820s or the 1830s, but he was still a spooky-looking man. And there was a painting of him that hung kind of in one of the shady, shadowy corners of the sanctuary, of the church. And we were convinced the sun was slowly setting in that painting. I still remember in high school, my dad and I would drive in the evening for youth group. It met at, I think, 5:30. And when I became old enough and my parents let me drive, when our little red Ford Escort rolled into New Orleans, I would feel a sense of safety and welcome every time that building came into sight. And that's the end of part one. So now we're going to do the offering, which is this month shared with the Louisiana Environmental Action Network. This is also Earth Day or Earth Day weekend, and I completely forgot about that when I wrote the sermon. So pretend I'd put a whole thing about the earth as our home, and that is the theme. The Louisiana Environmental Action Network has been doing a lot of really strong advocacy in the state for a long time. We're going to split the offering right down the middle. I will ask you to give, online people, there's 1,000 ways to give online. We're going to narrow it down to 2 or 3 of your favorites, but for now, just go to any of the 1,000 ways to give. I will ask you to give very generously, as this morning's offering is gratefully given and received. When I was living in Austin in the early 2000s, there was this old-style vegetarian restaurant called Mother's. It was a great place, but it has since shut down. It had really good salsa. It had a veggie burger with this vegan cheese that was really sticky that I can't find anywhere. I know that sounds weird, but it actually made the burger taste good. It was one of those old-style vegetarian restaurants, like the kind where the newest chef had to ban carob from being in the building. That's a deep cut for 3 of you and no one else. But there was one day I was good. You know the carob problem. When I was a kid, my mom was like, I found this great chocolate substitute. Yeah. See? Some of you are here with me. It's like the Diet Coke of the chocolate world. Anyway, I actually wrote in here, but I digress, and I didn't write any of that part about the carob. So one day I was going into that restaurant. They had this little entryway. You know how they have the 2 doors, you walk in the one door and then you have the bigger door. But I walked into that first door in the little teeny tiny foyer. And in that foyer area, and nowhere else in the world have I smelled it, but it smelled just like the kitchen at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans. And for those few brief steps between the front door and the door to the front counter, I had that same feeling of safety that I had every time that church building came over the horizon. That was the church where they taught me how to make jambalaya when I was in high school. They also taught me how to make cheese grits. And when I would go back, even as a vegan in my mid-20s, and I made cheese grits in the building, vegan ones, garlic cheese grits, they tasted better than anywhere else that I'd had them. I came back to that building in 2006 when we were bringing youth to New Orleans to do Katrina relief. We stayed in one of the upstairs classrooms that were converted into makeshift dorms by bringing bunk beds in. Also, I want to pause here to say that this is really about our church and our building, but I will get to that in a little while. And you should know that this church got started by individuals in Baton Rouge who wanted a Unitarian church here. And the minister in New Orleans, Reverend Albert Orlando, would come up and help support the church in its earliest days. There's actually an oak tree planted for Reverend Orlando on our grounds. So this church is not an outgrowth of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans, and it's not an outgrowth of that. Does that make sense? No? Okay. I have been back to that church many times. Many things in that church gave me comfort, including stained glass, the bust sculpture of the very creepy Parson Clapp, the paintings of all of their former ministers, the fact that they could grow bananas in their courtyards, and the bananas were actually so ripe that when I stayed at the Center for Ethical Living, their chef made bananas Foster out of those courtyard bananas. I was at a spring conference in that building in 2013 when our conference, the Southwestern Unitarian Universalist Conference, which has been a gathering group since the early 1920s, when they voted to disband and bring in the regionalization that our denomination has taken on. I still remember the sermon that our minister emeritus, Steve, preached the Sunday after those awful floods here in 2016. He said, and I'm paraphrasing because what matters is what got stuck in my brain, but he said, stop saying it's just things. The things that people lost, they are the things that you chose to connect you to the world. They are the tendrils that connect us with what we value the most. And I am talking so much about that building in New Orleans because last Sunday was that congregation's last service in that building. Through a series of membership and financial declines, which I trace all the way back to that hurricane, through bad luck, and as an example of how hard it is to recover post-pandemic, they simply did not have the members or the money to maintain that very large and expensive building. They voted to sell it and then to start renting space at a local Methodist church down the street. I do not disagree with the decision, but I am grieving because of that decision. There are things about the physical building that connected me to my faith. And I know that congregations are always moving and always changing, and that I could not go back there, both because now I serve as a minister and because I am both geographically and spiritually located here, but also because I'm a different person. I'm also no longer an impressionable teen. I know that the congregation that cultivated me into the ministry is gone and a new congregation is there. I know that I have floated down that river. I know that some of this is nostalgia. I know some of this is a grief that I have with the shortness of life. But when I thought about that idea of love calling me home, the closing hymn, I thought about how we have to recreate home over and over and over. Whenever a church member moves out of a house, especially one that they've lived in for a long time, I offer for them that we do a house blessing. Because homes are not just things. They are places we are connected to. They are places where we have invested our time and our energy. They're the places where we got good news and bad news. They held us through some of the good and the bad and the boring and the exhilarating times. And I will ask you to think about this building, not the people in it today, but the physical building. Who has been comforted by this building? Who, when they saw it coming over the horizon as they drove down Goodwood Boulevard, who felt okay about their life? Who felt carried safely home when they pulled into this parking lot? Whose lives have been memorialized in this building and in our fellowship hall and even in our choir room? Whose lives live beyond us because of what they have given to this church? Who grew up in this building knowing that they were loved? Who has found meaning in this building in ways that we cannot articulate, and we have been discouraged from articulating because they are just things? And this congregation is more than just things.
Why did I listen to your calling, O God? Why did I step out on faith, O love? Why did I lift my feet, ignore my fear, and run toward the unknown? Now, I am far from home. My heart aches for familiar land, for people who greeted me with kisses. I can't see the way back. It doesn't exist. I can't see the way forward, but I long for the place I knew. By the time I find the way, my children will be grown and gone. But today you are silent. The voice that whispered wind into my sails has stilled. Fear rises in me like a tsunami far from shore. Tonight, I will sleep without comfort.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears through all the years, singing.
May you be tender and gentle with yourself and be cared for by those who will envelop you with compassion and presence. May you know that there is so much beauty in your grief, especially when it feels messy. May you know that the depth of your grief is a measure of the love your heart is capable of. May you cry an ocean of tears and never fear the tides of your grief. May you remember in moments of despair that all life comes from the womb of sacred darkness, and that something new will be born from this void. May you allow yourself to change. May your experience of loss expand your capacity to extend compassion to others. May you eventually wear your scars as luminous gems on the unfurled wings of your heart. And may you always remember the preciousness of life.
Good friends from whom we soon must part, where are we bound? Your hands and voices lift my heart. Here is my home. Come darkness, come light, where are we bound? Come morning, come night, here is my home. For those who work in harmony, where are we bound? We'll learn to live in unity. Here is my home. Come darkness, come light, where are we bound? Come morning, come night, here is my home. If we can join ourselves in song, where are we bound? Our hearts will live when we are gone. Here is my home. Come darkness, come light, where are we bound? Come morning, come night, here is my home. The spirit which finds music here, where are we bound? Live forever in the air. Here is my home. Come darkness, come light, where are we bound? Come morning, come night, here is my home.
The last reading was from the religious educator at that church. We went to youth group together. The summer of 2020, we had a guest preacher do one of the weird online Zoomy things. Her name was Julia Hamilton. She was also in the same youth group I was in, just a year before I got there. The invocation this service was from one of the ministers who served that church. And when you installed me, that minister gave me this stole, which was worn by the minister of the church who served there when I was in high school, who has since passed. And our former intern, who heard her called to the ministry in that church, well, a member of the ministerial fellowshipping committee panel that passed her just like a week or two ago, was one of the former ministers serving that church. On Easter Sunday, I solicited videos from every former or affiliated minister in this church. I did that because I wanted you to see the breadth of the reach this congregation has. And I wanted today's service to be a time to acknowledge what is going on within Unitarian Universalism in the state. Now that I serve you, now that I've been your minister for like 12 or 13 years, you all know I'm the second longest serving minister in the history of this church. That's weird, right? No. That was not a pride thing. It's like, that doesn't feel that long, right? Yeah. But now that I've been here that long, I know where all the candles are kept. I know how the staffing works. I know the condition of the attic. I know what the finance committee and the personnel committee look like. Now that I know all of these things, it's easy for me to lose sight of how spiritually important the building is. We have 3 tasks as a religious people. The first is to make meaning. It is for us to understand what God is, what the afterlife is, what death is, what hope is, what all of these things that help us make sense of this very strange world. And then when we come together as a church, we let those different beliefs collide into each other and figure out what we believe with each other. The second is our justice work. It is to make the world we deserve, not just the world as it was or is. It is to pull us as deep into beloved community as the threads of our society will allow. Now, this means doing external work, like trying to convince the legislature that you're allowed to mention genders in school. By the way, if they won't do that, I think we get rid of all father-daughter dances, because those mention gender. No more yes ma'am, yes sir. Those mention genders. The legislature's opening a big can of worms, but I digress. But it also means the internal work of identifying the ways in which we are allowing poisonous ideas about gender and race and success and our bodies, and how we are letting them poison us and how we are poisoning other people through those ideas festering in us. And the third thing that this church is here to do is to help carry you home. It is to help you know that you are not going through this life alone. It is to help you know that we will hold you as best we can, and that no matter how scary things get, no matter how alone you may feel, that you are not alone. This building is a home for many of you. This congregation is a home for many of you. And it is true that the building does not make the congregation. It is true that the congregation makes the building. It is true that it doesn't matter what building that the First Unitarian Universalist Church of New Orleans would have been in. I would have felt the same love of God in any structure they would have been in. It is true that they are doing what is in the best interest of their congregation. And it is true that the buildings are not the congregation. And that building is the building I walked into and built connections with. And that building is being sold. It is true that your family is not just the family you grew up in. It is true your home is not just the house that you lived in. But that house you lived in when you were a child or a young adult or an older adult, for good and bad, that is still the house you lived in at that point. That soil has your DNA in it. And while we're not talking, this is not a precursor to plans to do anything with this building. We're here, we're good. It doesn't matter where the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge is. The congregation is who helps us to know that we belong. And there's one other piece missing from all of this. A home is made whole and holy based on how the people who reside within it act. It matters how well you love each other, how well you respect each other, how much you make space for each person to grow into their full selves. Actually, people growing into their full selves, that's what I would call God. So please know how you engage with each other, how you express your love for this life and your neighbor. That is how churches grow. This state will be brought to beloved community, whether it is because people finally understand it, or even if they have to come kicking and screaming, but it will come there eventually. And the only way we bring it there is us loving the hell out of this world and showing that there is a better way, that there is always a better way, and that you and they and we deserve it. May it be so. Amen. Let's sing.
When the waters are deep, friends carry me over. When I cry in my sleep, love calls me home. Time ferry me down the river, friends carry me safely over. Life tend me on my journey, love call me home. When the waters are cold, friends carry me over. When I'm losing my hold, love call me home. Time ferry me down the river, friends carry me safely over. Life tend me on my journey, love call me home. When I cannot swim, friends carry me over. Open your arms, take me in, love call me home. Time ferry me down the river, friends carry me safely over. Life tend me on my journey, love call me home. Take the gifts that I bring, friends carry me over. Deep within me I sing, love call me home. Time ferry me down the river, friends carry me safely over. Life tend me on my journey, love call me home. Life offers a chance, friends carry us over. Time cannot stop its dance, love call me home. Time ferry me down the river, friends carry me safely over. Life tend me on my journey, love call me home.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in peace, go in love, and come right back for the congregational meeting. Amen.